Now we are back to the great stuff. And so begins part one of the epic finale. Even if you have to get through them going camping, but let the battle for Hogwarts begin.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I'm not even supposed to be here today! Oh, fuck you!
Come on, you want me to drive? You're supposed to be suicidal. Remember,
I'll anybody
drive.
to drive.
Get in the car.
Fucking shit! Fuck me in the fucking ass! Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt!
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with a brand new movie review. And this movie review is going to be for 2010's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, directed by David Yates, and the first half of the 7th installment of Harry Potter, called Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the finale. So, what is the plot of Part 1 of the whole finale? Well, this plot, Harry, Ron, and Hermione have to go destroy the horcruxes to be able to destroy Voldemort for good. But now, here's the plot for the first half of the story. Voldemort's power is growing stronger. He now has control over the Ministry of Magic and also control over Hogwarts, following the events of Half-Blood Prince. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are off to finish Dumbledore's work and find the rest of the horcruxes to defeat the Dark Lord for good. But little hope remains for the trio and the rest of the Wizarding world, so everything they do has to go as planned. So, how was the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2 made? Well, Part 1 and Part 2 were filmed back-to-back with Harry Potter and the Deathly... Part 1 and Part 2 were filmed back-to-back from February 19, 2009 to June 12, 2010. Director David Yates, who shot the film alongside Eduardo Serra, described Part 1 as quite real and a road movie and kind of like a documentary. Originally, they were going to make the movie one entire really big 3-hour film, but the idea to split the book into 2 parts was suggested by executive producer Lion Wigram, because due to what David Heyman called creatively imperative, and Heyman initially responded negatively to the idea though, but Wigram asked how are we going to do it? So then, because he had read the book and discussed it with Steve Kloves, and he agreed with the division to split the movie in 2 parts. So, it was being announced in the teaser. Part 1 would be released November 2010. Part 2 would be released July 2011. So, after Part 1 was shot and marketed, Part 1 would be released in 2D cinemas and IMAX. Originally, both were going to be released in 3D, but they scrapped 3D for Part 1, and they saved 3D for Part 2. But Part 1 was still released in IMAX formats in the United Kingdom and the United States on November 19th, 2010 by Warner Bros. Pictures. This one... It got positive reviews from critics who praised the performances, the cinematography, the visual effects, and musical score. Some fans are a little bit more mixed on it because of stuff I'll get to later. When it came to the worldwide opening weekend, the movie grossed $330 million and became the 3rd highest in the series at the time, and the highest opening in 2010, and the 8th highest of all time at the time. And at a worldwide gross, when it finished its run of $960 million. So, Deathly Hallows Part 1 became the 3rd highest grossing film in 2010, the 10th highest grossing film of all time at the time, and the 3rd highest grossing Harry Potter film in terms of worldwide totals. And the film was nominated for many awards, including the Academy Award for Best Art Direction and Best Visual Effects. And of course, Part 2 would follow 8 months after this. Now, as for my reaction to this movie, well, I remember when the teaser for both this and Part 1 released around July 2010, advertising both parts, and being very pumped, and also a little scared by the ads, because I never read most of the books, except for the first book, so I actually really thought Harry was going to die in this film. Like, with what the trailers advertised, it looks like Harry was going to die at the end. A lot of people who read the book obviously knew that would not happen, but still. So when part 1 came out, during this time I was on a cross-Europe trip, and during the first days of it in Barcelona, I actually went and saw this film. And literally, it was in English with Spanish subtitles. Actually, though, I actually went and saw this movie in the theaters twice. First time was in Barcelona, second time was when I was back home. Because, yeah, now, here's the thing. As much as people don't like the camping scenes and find some parts a little boring, honestly, I kind of love this film. I think this was probably the first Harry Potter film I loved since The Goblet of Fire. And granted, part 2 is the superior half, but still, I still thought this was probably the best installment of the series since The Goblet of Fire and Prisoner of Azkaban. It felt like this time around, David Yates had really finally got his direction right with this one, and really started to finally get his handling right. Especially because after some of the more mixed fan reactions to Half-Blood Prince, they were clearly going to have to make the finale much better. They were really going to have to step up their game with this one. This is the one movie of the series where most of the allies that aid the trio barely appear in the movie much. There's fewer and fewer allies around, though. Even those within the Order of the Phoenix have, betrayed their ranks in the first hour of the film, establishes the danger and urgency of the situation at hand. Members of the Order like Mad-Eye Moody and Hagrid at the beginning of the film, they attempt to escort Harry to safety, but that mission immediately gets met with an attack from the Death Eaters, and you get an exciting high-speed flying bike chase that definitely is a very epic way to start off the movie. And definitely, there's a lot more action in this one, unlike the last one that barely really had any action. This film is infused with a profound sense of isolation and loss. The middle stretch in the film, there's some stuff in the middle that is a little tedious for some viewers, and why some viewers say they don't like this film. But it does reward the fans with, the depiction of the relationships between the characters since the first 4 films. And, there's one scene where people often really bash this scene where Harry and Hermione, dance together to this tune of Nick Cave's and Charm playing on the radio. Right there, but honestly, I might be the only person that thinks that scene's actually kind of important, because Ron basically became a bit of an asshole during his time and bailed on them, and Hermione's kind of depressed now that Ron's gone. It's just the two of them now, and plus, Harry kind of tries to kind of cheer her up at this moment, so I think the moment kind of works. Their friendship, strong and deep since the beginning, definitely gets tested a lot in this film. And Yates does deliver an emotional payoff towards the end of the film that was a perfect way to set up and leave us excited for part 2 back when this movie came out. And thanks to the decision to split the book into 2 films, Yates doesn't hurry and try to rush through these scenes. This one, he actually allowed the audience to experience the frustration, the jealousy, and the uncertainty of his characters, and allows for our trio to display, really some perfectly fine acting, as they always did with these films, with the minimalist distraction from any visual effects. And at times also does turn out to be a blessing for fans and the audiences, and allows them the opportunity to see their supporting characters for one final round. And also, the return of some characters that have been absent. Dobby, who was in the other books but was absent since Chamber of Secrets, he actually comes back in this one. They finally bring him back. Right there. But sadly, it's for a pretty sad moment near the end of the film. But how do we start off? Well, we kind of start off at Malfoy Manor, where Snape, who had joined seemingly the Death Eaters at the end of Half-Blood Prince, he meets with Lord Voldemort and the other Death Eaters, and he reports that the Order of the Phoenix is going to try to move Harry Potter because he's no longer under his mother's protective spell to a safe location. And then he immediately has Nagini kill this Muggle that they captured, and he takes Lucius's wand, and because his wand can't kill Harry Potter, he has to kill Harry himself. Then, of course, during all of this, Hermione, on the other hand, when we get to our main character, she has to erase her Muggle family's memories of her, because the Death Eaters will find them if they find out she's associated with them. So, it's pretty much off to a pretty sad beginning where, yeah, like knowing that if she doesn't erase the memories, the Death Eaters are going to kill her parents. So she's got to erase the memories of her and actually make it look like that she's not associated with them. And Harry, on the other hand, makes the Dursleys leave their home. And apparently, there were extra scenes they shot where Petunia mentions she lost her sister there, and there's actually one where Dudley actually is a little sad Harry's not going with them, and parts on good terms with Harry and bids farewell to him, and acknowledges that he never thought he was a waste of space at all, and finally starts to show his good side. Like, ever since apparently that Death Eater attack in Order of the Phoenix actually caused Dudley to see who he really was in that moment right there. So that's why Dudley's a much better person now. After that, it's like why Dudley's a lot nicer in that scene, and came to better terms with Harry after that. So they part on better terms, and honestly, why was that cut out? It's like, why was that stuff cut out? Yeah, the Dursleys weren't good. Dursleys weren't really nice people, but I feel like that should have stayed in the film. I think that would have made the scene actually a little more. That would have actually been a pretty well done scene in the film. Like, that should have stayed in the film. That should not have been cut out. Right there. Actually, I wish they had kept that bit with Harry and Dudley should have stayed in the film. Right there. Then, right there, and of course, then after that, Harry, like, tours his home one last time. And we get that throwback to the first movie, where he goes into that closet where we first saw him living in the first film, the beginning of the first film, sees the little night horses, the toy horses he played with in there, before all those envelopes came to him for the owls, and when Vernon was trying to seal off the whole mail slot. Right there, and that's a nice little throwback to that first one, where Harry has to visit that closet he first spent a while in one last time. Before having to leave that home he had to stay in frequently with the Dursleys for good. Get one last look at the place, saying goodbye to it. Then, the Order, Mad-Eye Moody, Mr. Weasley, Ron, Hermione, the twins, and some new characters, Bill Weasley, arrive. And they're all planning to move Harry. Oh yeah, and Hagrid also arrives too. I almost forgot about Hagrid. So they arrive, and in order to be able to move Harry safely, they pretty much take this potion that will make themselves look like Harry to distract the Death Eaters from the real Harry and Hagrid. There, and of course, after the transformation is complete, when they drink it, that Fred and George literally say, "Wow, we're identical." Of course, Mad-Eye Moody's trying to make them leave because the Death Eaters are on their way, and so they set off. And then, of course, by the time they're already long gone, though, Voldemort begins his attack on them, and sadly, Hedwig, Harry's pet owl, actually tries to save Harry, but sadly, she is immediately killed, which is very sad. And, of course, Mad-Eye Moody gets killed off screen, and that was a problem I had. That I did not like. But they get to the Weasleys' new home. Lupin at first, Lupin was also with them to see if that was to test that was the real Harry, and then everybody else arrives. Like, George is injured. Then, of course, they announce Mad-Eye died off screen. I wish we saw his death, and not just getting killed off screen, and then not just appearing and then announcing that he's been killed off. Like, that was really annoying. That I will admit. Then the very next day, they're prepping for Bill Weasley and Fleur's wedding. Fleur's wedding right there while they're hiding from the Death Eaters. The new Minister for Magic, Rufus, arrives, and he informs Harry, Ron, and Hermione that Albus Dumbledore left each of them this bequest, left Ron a Deluminator, Hermione this copy of the Tales of Beedle the Bard, and Harry the gold snitch he caught in his first Quidditch match from the first movie. Dumbledore also bequests the Sword of Gryffindor to Harry, but it went missing. Then, so, that's pretty much how this movie starts off. How this whole first half of the story starts. Amidst like the gloom, screenwriter Steve Kloves really provides for rare welcome moments of levity, where Harry's escort mission gets aided by magical decoys of Harry, one of them being Fleur, and of course to get to the Ministry of Magic, like during the later scene, like once it's just the three of them, one has to flush themselves down a toilet bowl. There's occasional sparks of humor that really are in between the film that is pretty much also can be a little menacing at times, but Kloves really does fumble slightly with the lengthy expository. Kloves definitely never had an impossible task to begin with here, and Kloves coming back and writing this film like really makes this a perfect beginning of the finale. And Yates, this time at his most confident here, unlike with 5 and 6, really guides the proceedings along admirably, and it folds them brisk at the start, and sets him for this measured pace, and finally picking up speed for as much as the climax as this first parter can have. And of course, the assurance really shows in the whole choices he has, and especially with the animated sequence where he tells about the story of the Deathly Hallows and the three brothers, and of course the soundtrack for the movie. Yes, the soundtrack has definitely really grown. It's a much more adult soundtrack this time around, and a more adult score. There's a little less of the reused John Williams theme in this one. Of course, the acting is still brilliant from all the cast, even with the other main characters that don't really appear in this one as much. And the tense atmosphere between Harry, Ron, and Hermione really comes across as perfect. This is the film where they have to test their whole friendship and where they have to pretty much rely on each other and nobody else. They're on the run from Death Eaters, like they're on the run from the Ministry even. So they gotta go destroy all these horcruxes in secluded areas where they can't be found. And of course with the doppelganger scenes at the beginning of the movie, like you still saw from all their behavior, like which character was which, though they were disguised in a different body. Like immediately as soon as this all begins, I could tell which ones the twins were in the very beginning once the transformation is complete. And the production values are very enduring. The darker scenes are definitely dark and they're definitely bleak, especially the beginning where it definitely looks like a noir film. And the scenery in the middle of the film is also gorgeous. The music is not only just more adult, but it's also another great delight. This one is really sweeping, it's grandiose, it's majestic, and also the most complex, the most atmospheric of all the Harry Potter scores. The script also, it's definitely better than the scripts for 5 and 6. Like, yeah, I mean, granted, there were still good moments from the scripts in 5 and 6, but those were weaker films. And of course, the story, despite the slow pacing, is definitely much more thoroughly well thought out with this adaptation. Yates' direction, yeah, you could tell it's definitely much better than it was in 5 or 6. Like, here, like, it actually looks like he took real charge, and the pivotal scenes, like, here, in general, they were wonderfully well handled. The acting was still good. The acting was definitely the best as among the ranks of the first 4 films, where Radcliffe was still a likable lead, Rupert Grint is still, like, the great comedic timing. There was some problems with Ron Weasley in this film. I will get to that later, and Watson easily gives her best performance in both this and part 2 of the series, and just about steals every scene she's in. Like, Severus Snape, though, like, he's only, like, the beginning of the film, but he still gives a great performance as well. The standouts for, like, the other main characters are Helen Bonham Carter as Bellatrix in this one. Like, this movie is pretty much Bellatrix at her most scary and most powerful. In fact, like, she kind of feels like the more of the main antagonist of this half. Like, Lord Voldemort's technically the antagonist of Deathly Hallows, no doubt. But he's only, like, a few glimpses, and his real form in actual scenes is, like, 2 scenes. The first scene and the very end scene. So, this one, like, Bellatrix is in this one a little more, so Bellatrix is kind of the antagonist of the first half. And Bill Nighy's, like, character of Scrimgeour is also good, but not really as memorable as some of the more other characters. And so yeah, during the wedding, news arrives during the whole event that the Ministry has fallen, Scrimgeour is dead, then Death Eaters immediately attack the wedding, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione escape to Grimmauld Place. Once they get there, though, Ron realizes that Sirius' brother Regulus Black is the R.A.B. we found out, a Half-Blood Prince who stole the locket from Voldemort. Then local thief Mundus Fletcher sold it to Dolores Umbridge. Oh, yeah. I should have mentioned this. Dolores Umbridge is back in this movie. That's also a problem I have. We have to see this stupid bitch again. Just why, like, and somehow she's already not in jail from after Order of the Phoenix. Somehow she's allowed back in the Ministry. That I don't get at all. Like, but yeah, sadly we have to see her again. At least it's just for a brief bit. Harry, Ron, and Hermione then infiltrate the Ministry and they recover the locket, but Death Eaters chase them in a chaotic exit. And right there, like during this hearing that this wrongfully accused witch, that Umbridge is pretty much wrongfully about to sentence, Harry then knows that she's lying, and we get that throwback to Order of the Phoenix where Umbridge made him write those lines, "I will not tell lies," when he tried to warn about Voldemort, and then Umbridge used this quill to carve that whole thing into his hand. And pretty much references that, and one mustn't tell lies, and then knocks her out with his wand. Good. Thank God for that. Then the escape happens, and security even chases them, but then they end up escaping to this forest. Ron is injured from the escape, and so the trio decide to start their journey in the forest with their camping tent to discover and destroy all of Voldemort's horcruxes in solitary, beginning with the lockets. So they try to destroy the lockets, and that all fails. So Hermione deduces that Gryffindor's sword can destroy horcruxes because it's a pedigree with the basilic's venom. And of course, like, our one cameo of the other Hogwarts students is when a Death Eater is searching for the Hogwarts Express train. One student literally says the Malfoy line, "Wait till my dad hears about this time around," because Malfoy's not at Hogwarts this time. He's back at Malfoy Manor, waiting for Harry and the trio to show up and kill them with his parents. And Neville's like, "He's not here, you idiot." And that's the one scene we've seen of them. Because keep in mind, guys, they were saving these guys for part 2. Right there. Like, this is basically supposed to be the first half about them finding the horcruxes. Like, the Hogwarts stuff doesn't come till part 2. But that's your one scene you get of them. During the course of their journey, though, this is where Ron becomes a bit of an asshole and starts to get affected by the Dark Locket. Yeah, I understand he's affected by the Dark Locket, but this is kind of just where he just really starts to become kind of a prick in this bit. And he gets frustrated and pretty much, like, he looks like way too jealous of, like, Harry and Hermione's, friendship during those moments. And he gets frustrated by the slow progress and is jealous of Harry and Hermione. He then has this big fight with Harry about their whole progress. He even yells at him that his parents are dead, and then even storms off and abandons the quest. Then, of course, after that, they leave for more other spots, and then you get the dancing scene that I'm one of the few people that thinks this scene actually works. Some people may disagree with me on that, but I think it's kind of essential to the plot because now that Ron's gone, it's just the two of them, and Hermione's still a little depressed from losing Ron during that moment, so it's kind of Harry trying to cheer her up. So I think the scene works well. But that's just me, though. Then Harry touches the snitch to his lips, and reveals a cryptic message. It says, "I open that they close." Then Hermione notices a strange symbol drawn on the bard. It's identical to Luna Lovegood's father, Xenophilus. To the one that Luna Lovegood's father wears. So one of the film's standout elements is the portrayal of the Deathly Hallows themselves, and it's presented not just as objects of power, but as symbols of choice and consequence. It challenges the notion of what it truly means to be a hero. Like, it even shows how dangerous these horcruxes are, because it really starts to affect one of our characters, gets him really mad and angry at them for quite a bit of time, and makes them storm, and then they storm off from the quest. Like, it really shows how dangerous this mission is. It really kind of has that Lord of the Rings feel, where whenever Frodo got closer to Mount Doom, the more powerful, the more demonic the ring got, and the more possessed he got from it. And the more angrier he became, to the point where he succumbed to the ring's power and almost refused to destroy it, and Sauron would have won until Gollum showed up. So it really kind of has that kind of Lord of the Rings feel to it, so with the one ring thing. The story unfolds with a sense of urgency to really get these horcruxes destroyed, and a touch of melancholy, because we witness our characters grappling with the weight of the destiny that they're now forced to go on, and the inevitable cost of the impending war that's going to happen in part 2. Director David Yates does balance moments of tension with glimmers of hope, and allows the audience to breathe through their despair, another reason why I think the whole dance scene works. The pacing does feel deliberate and urgent, and it draws us deeper into a narrative that builds suspense while actually still kind of remain true to the more longer nature of the book. Because the book's one of the longest books of the series from what I know. In Deathly Hallows in this part 1, this movie has great themes of loyalty, rebellion interwoven, and with some breathtaking visuals, as always, better visuals than 6. And a gripping storyline. This is a film that does demand reflection to this reminder that magic lies not just in spells and potions, but in the choices that are made when faced with adversity. First half of the finale, it's a reminder that the end is not merely an ending, but it's an opportunity for growth, resilience, and the strength of the human spirit. There are the action sequences in this, they are very stunning. They perfectly recreate the scenes. This one's a little more slower in kind of comparison. It's kind of like with the opposite of Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2, or the opposite of Infinity War Endgame before those came out. You know how with those two duologies where Kill Bill Volume 1 and Infinity War were the most action-packed of the duology. They had the most action, they were just action non-stop and they never lit up. Volume 2 and Endgame were kind of the more story-driven ones, the more character-driven ones. There was still action around the finale, but it was kind of a little more, they were a lot slower in comparison. This one is actually the more slower one. This one's the more character-driven one. This one's the more story-driven one. Part 2 is the crazy, chaotic action non-stop one. So, Harry decides they need to go back to Godric's Hollow. And of course, because that's where his parents were killed, and that's where he was born. And so you get another nice little moment between Harry and Hermione where they realize it's kind of the Christmas holidays around this time, and they're visiting Harry's gravestone, and then they search for the store to Godric's Hollow, and they encounter the strange symbol in the cemetery, right there where you get the gravestone scene. Then they meet elderly historian Bathilda Bagshot, who invites them into her cottage. They fight a foe of the unman at Harry's dream that stole a wand from wandmaker Gregor Rorich. Then Bathilda morphs into Voldemort's snake Nagini and attacks Harry, but Hermione separates them to safety. But her bounding spell accidentally destroys Harry's wand. Then Hermione identifies the man in the photo as Dark Wizard Galar Grindelwald. And then another moment between them right there where they mention that how this place was a memory with her parents, and they think she thinks her and Harry should stay there and grow old. And another moment right there where it's kind of where they kind of feel like they're not going to win in their quest, and almost feel like they're kind of about to give up hope in this moment. So they're kind of starting to have skeptical if they're not going to win in their quest. You know what I mean? But then that night, though, adult Patronus leads Harry to this frozen pond where we find what we think for now is Gryffindor's sword lying on the bottom. So Harry dives into the ice-cold water. The locket around his neck starts to tighten and it strangles him, but thankfully, though, Ron actually comes back and saves Harry, retrieves the sword. The locket then activates, and it reveals this alternate vision of Harry and Hermione saying that they were better off without him, happier without him, and then it shows the whole hallucination of the two having sex, which was not needed either. As well, you did not need a sex scene with some hallucinated version of these characters. At least it's brief, but still, really, did you really have to add that in there? Right there, but Ron manages to destroy the locket in time, and Ron explains that the Illuminator led him to their location. Apparently, after he had just left, he immediately realized his mistake and wanted to go back to them right away, but he couldn't find them, but the Illuminator immediately led them there. And of course, though, when Hermione sees him, she's still a little pissed off at him for leaving. for a while, and even starts to ask Harry where her wand is because Hermione lent him his. And then, of course, after Hermione kind of cools down, they then immediately visit Xenophilus at Luna's house, and they learn the symbol represents the Deathly Hallows, and this is where we get our little animated sequence with the backstory of how these all got created. Where apparently years earlier, there were 3 brothers that got this prize from death. That was just a way to kind of trick them, where one was a resurrection stone, a cloak of invisibility that Harry got in the first movie, and the Elder Wand. The most powerful wand known, and Dumbledore's wand. Possessing all 3 really makes one the master of death. So, then of course, though, after the story where death was actually where the whole gifts were a trick, and he killed all 3, and the death pretty much killed all 3 of the brothers. Then, just as the 3 are about to leave, it turns out Xenophilus actually summoned the Death Eaters to exchange Harry for a kidnapped Luna, who was pretty much, we find out, was kidnapped. Before we last saw her at the wedding, and now we find out that she's been kidnapped, and the 3 though manage to escape, but Snatchers are after them, they capture them. This attempt to disguise Harry as this more mangled version of himself does not work. And it figures out it's Harry, so they take them to the Malfoys. Then during one vision before that happens, though, Harry sees this elderly Grindelwald telling Voldemort that the Elder Wand is buried with Dumbledore. The dark turn of events of this film is definitely inevitable given the content of the books, but Yates really realized it in a way that, in a way where the last 2 films really felt different from the first 4. Right here. This time around, this one, there's definitely a little more blood, characters are actually dying left and right, and stuff that supplements the main plot, and it's not, fluffy and magical, it's actually very dramatic. And Harry's still the courageous and impulsive one, Hermione's still a smart, prepared one, Ron's still the oblivious one, the dialogue between them is definitely much more dull, and the moments they share are very complex. These 3 friends have to survive on their own. They are definitely not the kids anymore. They're definitely starting to become adults. They have to search for these horcruxes. They're on the run from Death Eaters, the dark wizards and witches that seize the Ministry and magic, and have begun this reign of terror. And considering, they were able to play this type, they really continue to prove themselves as vulnerable adults in this one. Because this is the big finale, where this is pretty much the one where they all grow up. There's a build-up to the events, and there's lengthier shots that do have a lasting impact, and it does feel like a dramatic motion picture in kind of a way. This film just could have hopped easily too quick from scene to scene with action every turn, but David Yates for part 1 knew he needed to take the time, and kind of save more of the epic stuff for part 2. The scene in Godric's Hollow, when Harry and Hermione follow the old Bathilda to her house, they find she's not quite who they think she is, it evolves slowly, and accumulates in this tense sequence that does last a little shorter. And cinematic quality of the films does continue to improve here, and especially shows since David Yates really got the direction for this one right. And Deathly Hallows is definitely not forgiving those that aren't already familiar with the universe, whether it be the books, whether it be the movies. This darker tone, the higher proportion of drama, and more cinematic feel really improved the entertainment factor for those that were definitely hoping to get something out of this whole 2-parter finale, even if they had watched the films or never read the books, like myself. I read the first book, but not really the others. Some people have told me stuff that happens in the books right here, so I know. That's how I know some stuff in the books, is because people told me about them. Right there, so it's nice to know those little factors. And for the first time in the series, this is the one film in the series where the school Hogwarts does not appear. Right there, you see the Hogwarts Express for one scene, but that's about it. Harry and his 2 pals, under the order of Dumbledore, this is just mostly supposed to be about these 3 finding the objects before Voldemort gains any more strength. And it makes headway for running things anyway, what with these Death Eaters and the Ministry of Magic being being right onto them and trying to go after them and stuff. This movie, they can't go to Hogwarts. They have to skip their year of Hogwarts. And they can't really And with the camping scenes, they can't really do them in public areas. They can't destroy the horcruxes in public areas because Death Eaters are after them. The Ministry is after them. A lot of bad people are after them. So they gotta destroy them in a more secluded area, and they gotta kind of figure out how they're gonna destroy the horcruxes. Hence why we have some camping scenes in the film. That's why they're in a tent. They're kind of coming up with ways how they're gonna have to destroy the horcruxes and figure out where to find them. And also I think the camping scenes also kind of allow some even more development for our trio and putting their friendship to the test. So, after the three have been captured, they are given to Malfoy Manor, where Bellatrix Lestrange sees a snatcher with Gryffindor's sword, and then she believes that was in her Gringotts vault. So, Bellatrix has Wormtail lock up Harry and Ron in the cellar, in the downstairs, so she can interrogate and torture Hermione. Once Harry and Ron are in the cellar, they encounter Luna, Ollivander, and Griphook the Goblin from the first movie. The Goblin that led Harry to his vault. He's now played by a different actor. Because the last act, the actor who played him in the first movie had passed on around this time. But upstairs, we get this really disturbing bit where Bellatrix tortures Hermione by carving into her arm. I'll get to that part later in the bad qualities, but actually, no, I'll talk about it now. But how this scene goes is Bellatrix is screaming at Hermione, has her pinned to the floor, is pretty much yelling how she got in her vault, and then, of course, when Hermione denies it in fear and in tears, Bellatrix then pretty much carves mudblood into Hermione's arm as she's, like, screaming loud. Like, oh god, this scene is just fucking disturbing. Like, this part is one of my bad qualities with the film. Like, easily, like, another thing, like, get this, like, when they were filming this scene, this actually caused Watson to actually be scared of Carter for a little bit. But then Carter immediately had to make sure that Emma Watson was alright after they stopped filming this scene and reassured that it was all acting. Like, and originally this scene was going to be 5 minutes long, but Watson's screams actually immediately made them shorten it, and honestly, I think that's a change that's definitely for the best. Then, while they're downstairs, Ron and Harry, who sound a little too calm when they say they have to do something, but Harry then begs for help using this mirror shard in which he believes he glimpsed Dumbledore, then Dobby magically appears in response and immediately helps save everyone, while Harry then grabs her captured wands from Draco Malfoy once they get upstairs, and while Bellatrix is torturing Griphook, and then once Dobby rescues all three of them and snatches away Miss Malfoy's wand, they then disapparate, but Bellatrix then picks up this knife and throws it into the void that they disappeared in. And by the time they get to Bill Weasley and Fleur's house and cottage, where Luna already is, they immediately see that the knife actually has hit Dobby. And Dobby pretty much, in another very sad moment, which this is a moment that's known for breaking a lot of fans' hearts. Just about, whenever they think of saddest Harry Potter moments, this is often always a lot of fans' number one. Is the scene where Dobby dies. And it is a sad moment. Because guys, when I first saw this film, I never read the book. So, I didn't know that so I really didn't know this moment. So, this moment came out of nowhere the first time I saw this in the theater. And right there. And, I was thinking hopefully the knife wouldn't be able to hit them in time. But it turns out it hit Dobby. And I was like, no! No. It's there. And Dobby thinks it's a beautiful place. And he's happy to be with his friends, and I'm like, oh god, please don't do this. No! And right there, then, Luna kind of provides Harry some comfort by closing Dobby's eyes and saying, now he could be sleeping, and that whole bit is where I just burst. At that quote. No. That is just where I broke. Saying now he could be sleeping just makes it even sadder. And Harry then announces he wants to bury Dobby without magic and bury him properly, so he buries him right near Bill Floor's seaside cottage, which is another safe house that they're going to reside at for a little bit. They come up with their next plan. And that's pretty much the last we see the trio for part 1. How does our finale go? Well, this isn't really a finale because I'm not really saying how the finale goes for this one because this is just a one-parter movie. This is just the first half of a big movie. That whole finale quote I usually say could be saved for part 2's review. They talk about that film's finale. How part 1 ends. Voldemort is now at Dumbledore's grave, breaks open his tomb, retrieves the Elder Wand, and zaps up into the sky, and he now has the Elder Wand, and so the battle for Hogwarts begins. Right there. And then it cuts to black. So, if you remember when you went and saw this back in 2010, you'd have to wait 8 more months to see it get resolved. And back then, I didn't really get familiar with stuff on Wikipedia or spoilers back then because I was a little young for that stuff. So when the credits roll, I was like, that's it? It's over? It can't be over. Like, you had to wait 8 more months to see it all get resolved. You have to wait 8 more months for this to continue. You have to wait till the summer. But that's how part 1 ends, to be concluded. I feel like I wish they put it to be concluded at the end. I do wish they kind of put that at the end like they did with The Matrix Reloaded, like they did with Back to the Future Part 2, and like they recently just did with Across the Spider-Verse, except the worst thing is you'll have to wait a lot more years for that cliffhanger to be resolved. But that's how Part 1 wraps up. Until Part 2, that is. So the movie isn't really over yet. Now, do I have bad qualities with the film? Yeah. There are problems with the film, like most of the movie, which a lot of people seem to really criticize. It's usually them camping in a tent, and sure, some of the camping scenes could be a little boring, but they're there for the. But to be fair, they're kind of there to kind of drive the plot and drive their plan to destroy the horcruxes and stuff. And Ron Weasley becomes quite a bit of a prick in this movie. A lot more than Goblet of Fire, because, yeah, he was somewhat that in Goblet of Fire for a brief bit, except it was a brief bit, and after the first match in Goblet of Fire, they resolved all that immediately, and then they were friends for the rest of the film, at the very least. This one, he just sounds a little more angrier as the film progresses, to the point where he gets all mad all because Harry and Hermione are having a few moments of friendship together. Yeah, the Horcrux is affecting him and stuff. The Locket's affecting him, but still. Like, after the argument, he just abandons the mission and doesn't return until the Ice River scene. And also, we don't really see a scene of him realizing his jerk-ass ways. In a way, like, I wish we could have saw a scene where he immediately tries to go back and realizes his actions, and then that would have made more sense why he just suddenly returned. Like, and it's nice as nice as it is to see Dobby back, but the thing is, though, he was in the other books and not any other films, so it kind of feels forced to just bring him back for this and just kill him, and then to just have him killed. If you're not going to bring him back for the rest of the films. And when it comes to the Hermione torture scene, like, apparently in the book, when Ron and Harry heard Hermione screaming, they actually banged against the cell door and panicked when they said, we have to do something. And in the movie, they sound way too calm about the whole situation, and during filming this scene, like, the two actors even broke character and actually thought Watson was actually being attacked, so right there. But no, I wish they actually panicked instead. I wish they could have had them a little more panicked during that moment, like, because in the actual movie scene, they sound way too calm. They kind of look a little too calm. Like, I wish they actually had them panicking during that moment. Like, to me, anyways, they really should have went with that. So what if they almost broke character? I feel like that would have made the scene even more effective. And a lot of the major characters, like, don't really appear much in this one, but then again, this is just part 1, so I guess it makes sense for that. Other than those, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1, to me, is easily the best entry since 3 and 4, and it's definitely a good Part 1 of an epic finale, and a good setup for the epic Part 2. So in the end, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1, it's totally worth watching and buying for your collection, no doubt, if you are ready to see the film and how this all ends and the destruction of Voldemort. If you're running to rank Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1, here's how I'm going to rate this movie. So overall, if you are ready to see how this whole story wraps up and see our three main characters go off on this war to destroy the horcruxes and defeat Voldemort for good, to carry out Dumbledore's mission for him, then so go watch and buy Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1 for your collection, no doubt, and Part 2. And if you're running high rank Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1, I'm going to give Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1 an 8.5 out of 10. There we go, guys. That wraps up my review for Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now, I want to know in the comments down below what you guys saw at Deathly Hallows Part 1, whether you're one of the few who does not like this movie, or whether you're one of the few who also likes this movie like I do. And, with that being said, now that we finished Part 1, you could go back on the Blu-ray shelf where you belong. We are now down to the last Harry Potter film. Oh, and this is going to be an epic watch tomorrow. This is it. The big battle of Hogwarts we've been building up for. It's all going to finally happen in the next parts. But until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe to Don G. Corleone.